Hello and welcome to this week's Coaching for Self-Belief podcast with Andy and Pete. So Andy, what have we got this week?
Well, Pete, I'd like to talk about playing in a competitive situation and being able to choose something appropriate to focus on that will get you results. And so the thing I'm going to talk about is a critical variable. So a critical variable is something that is observable. We don't have to try. It's measurable and it will have an impact on the outcome. So I was playing a table tennis match, 2 sets to 1 down against a guy. And I was aware that I wasn't recovering very well. So I actually said to myself, I need to recover quicker. And I sent myself into self 1 and I started to try to recover quickly. And I came off winning, but I picked a variable that was something good to focus on, but it wasn't in true inner game style. It wasn't something that I was just observing. So I thought the next day, what is it I could have paid attention to when I discovered that I wasn't recovering quick enough? What is it I could have paid attention to? And I realized what would have been easy would have been to have looked at my opponent's bat. So it would have been just observe my opponent's bat, see if I can keep my attention on that for the whole match, because that's observable. It's measurable in terms of keeping my attention on it, and it will have an impact on the match. But the reason I wasn't able to pick that as a focus in the heat of battle was I believe, and this is through my own reflection, that I hadn't trained to play table tennis for a while. I've been into tennis for a bit, and so I was outside of training table tennis. But equally, and probably just importantly, I didn't have that self-awareness in the match to put it on that variable. So it was interesting for me to reflect the next day, because obviously I came off the match by I kept telling myself recover, but it was taking a lot of energy. Whereas a simple observation of just saying to myself, let's just focus on watching the other person's bat and let's just trust that. And I know that I've done that before and I played really well, would have been sufficient to have got me a result as well. So what I'm trying to link here is our ability to be self-aware, but link that to training. We must also train, but also the self-awareness is linked to finding a critical variable that's really going to get us the results in this enjoyable way, because when we're observing, it's great. All we've got to do is put our attention on it and keep it there, as opposed to this, make sure you do this, make sure you do this, make sure you bend your knees, make sure you hit the ball in front.
So there's the difference between observation mode and trying mode.
Trying mode, yeah.
And I think that's a lovely set of ideas, just to link the self-awareness with choosing a critical variable, and that can be so beneficial during a match in competition. It helps to keep it simple. You choose something to focus on, and it brings in all of the benefits of the inner game. You trust that your onboard computer can deal with the information well.
And actually, Pete, what I realised also was if I'd actually trained and perhaps written down, okay, if I notice that I'm recovering late, this could be a variable to pay attention to, and had a little look at those before the match. So that's where I think the practice comes in.
And the focus on the bat of your opponent, was that to get a different result, or was that actually helping you with your recovery?
So that would help me with my recovery.
And
the result, the result would be different in terms of there wouldn't be that self one trying to recover, which was instructing the body, recover. That by watching someone play the ball at the other end of the table 10 feet away, my body would naturally recover for the next shot.
Yeah. And that's how it works. That uh, the critical variable might not be immediately obvious, but it has sometimes a knock-on effect, doesn't it? And it has benefits
Yeah. Yeah.
with performance.
Yeah.
It might not be immediately obvious, and it wasn't to me just now. That how does that connect? If I'm observing the opposition's bat, what's the
That's right.
connection there between recovery,
That's
bat
right.
and recovery? But interesting to note that that's what you think will help. Something
So I
to
think that
observe.
the link I would say in this instance is that when we train, and I know people that I've trained in the inner game, sort of, and it might be something simple like bounce hit. One guy said to me this week, he said, "Oh, just wanted to let you know, I was playing like a drain. I was 5-5 against this guy I should beat, and then I started to do bounce hit both ends, and I won the next 8 out of 9 games." But what happened in that moment, in his self-awareness, he realized I need to focus on something to get the result here. I've trained bounce it in my sessions, and I know it can work. And he trusted himself to put his attention on that and got the result.
Yeah. And with the bounce hit exercise, famous exercise, but it's also useful to connect that with critical variables, isn't it? Because there are critical variables in bounce hit, two of them, bounce and hit.
Yeah.
Those are the two things that you're watching. They vary, but you're watching them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's critical variables in action, if you like.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, if you can pick a critical variable in a match, but what I would recommend is train it in your practice sessions, know which critical variables are going to be helpful and useful for you, and see if you can call on one if you need to.
Yeah, it's sort of for each player. Um, I look at it like I'm developing a little toolbox for my players, and they might have slightly different tools in their toolbox. But the tools are the critical variables. The tools are things that work for them to focus on.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
for some of them, it might be focusing on, just observing their split step. That's a critical variable, the timing of it. For some of them, it might be bounce hit that they like. For others, the variable of breathing. Are they, if they step back and observe their breathing, that's a critical variable that they can look at and observe. It could be anything to do with ball awareness, racket awareness, body awareness. And any little thing that you can observe in that way becomes a critical variable, doesn't it?
it does.
So
And the difference, I think, is that it becomes a more enjoyable experience because there isn't that trying to do something
yeah,
like
it's
happened to me.
just very simply observing, isn't it? That's the
Perfect.
practice. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Being able to pay attention and focus your mind. Yeah, yeah. So it was an interesting experience because I've been doing this for a long time, and I was thinking, well, why did I struggle so much to find that critical variable that would have helped me through the game? And I got the result I wanted, but with a lot of effort. And the reason I think that I didn't find that critical variable was just purely because I hadn't practiced enough. And so, I'm trying to link here the ability to practice, the ability to be self-aware, and have a critical variable. And I think when those three are in place, then I think we're likely to see a higher level of performance and an enjoyable level of performance.
And I was just going to say with racket sports, that there's the rhythm of a match where it's broken up by points and
Yeah,
changeovers and
yeah,
lots of little breaks, and so there's a opportunity there to reset and use the time between points to choose a critical variable, to choose something to focus on for the next point, and that's something that can be trained in a match, in a practice match, or during training, just to ask yourself, or if you're a coach, to ask your pupil, okay, before we start this next point, what are you going to focus on?
Mm, absolutely. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then that links in beautifully with all the work that Jim Loehr did way back on, how to use the time between the points and the
Mm-hmm.
routines and everything. That for me, part of the routine between points is that however you play it, that you end up with something kind of programmed in that you're going to focus on, that you've chosen
Mm,
something simple, a critical variable that you're going to focus on during the point.
mm, absolutely. Yeah. No, that's good. So it's about focus and practice and self-awareness and working on these within your practices. Um, and like you say, having a toolbox of things that you can pull upon when you're in a match.
Mm.
Uh, and I think the reflection part's important too. Maybe you don't always pick the right focus, but reflect on the match afterwards and see if you could have found a better focus, and write that down and
Yeah,
see.
what
Then again,
what might
just like
might have worked
yeah,
better. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, good. So
very
maybe
good.
have a practice in competitions and see what you can focus on.
Yep, and if you're coaching on court, then uh, check with your player that they're focusing on something simple before each rally or
Yeah,
before each point, and see how much that can help.
yeah, yeah.
Very good. Okay, thanks for
Totally.
watching. See you next time.
Cheers, guys.